Okay. I now call the meeting to order of the Instructional Quality Commission. Commissioner Flores is going to lead us with the salute to the flag.
Please stand. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay. There are no changes to the agenda. So next is the approval of the minutes. So you have the minutes to the March 22nd through 23rd, 2018 Commission meeting and April 16th, 2018 Science Subject Matter Committee meeting before you. If you have substantive changes, please present them now. If there are minor changes not affecting the content, please submit them to staff. Okay, hearing none. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Munoz. Do we have a second?
Second.
And seconded by Commissioner Lara. Is there any discussion? Okay, public comment? Then I call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Anyone abstain from voting? The motion passes. Okay, so I'll move on to the report of the chair. So good morning, everybody. Welcome back. After meeting in April for a week to kick off the review of science instructional materials, we're here today for a short meeting. That's kind of nice. I would just like to remark that I thought we did an excellent job selecting and training the reviewers for their review of the science instructional materials. By now, the reviewers will have received their shipment of materials and will be diligently working on their review to be ready to come back in July to deliberate and ultimately report their findings to the State Board, or to create the report of findings for the State Board. California leads the way with their state adoption in terms of educator representation and work grounded in the California Science Framework. And it's a credit to the CDE staff, Executive Director Dr. Gregson, and my fellow commissioners. So thank you to everybody that has volunteered to make this process successful. Okay. And now, Executive Director Dr. Gregson.
All right, good morning, everyone. So I'll continue on the vein of science, and I'm pleased to report that we now have a published version of the California Science Framework. Currently, it is an electronic format for printing purposes only. We have staff who are working on ensuring it is 508 accessible for the web posting. And so if you would like to attain this electric file, members of the public just need to email our team at CFIRD, and we will provide a link to the document free of charge. So very exciting news, because it took a lot of work to get that done. So I really appreciate my staff for being able to do that. I'd also like to take a moment and highlight our California NGSS events that are taking place across the state. These events support the implementation of our science standards. First, we have the Accelerating into NGSS statewide rollout events. These are 2-day trainings geared towards grades K through 12 academic coaches, administrators, curriculum leads, and teacher leaders. We've already had 5 events hosted by San Mateo County Office of Education, Orange County Office of Education, Tulare County Office of Education, San Bernardino Superintendent of Schools, and Sacramento County Office of Education. And I got to open that event. I was very excited. And the last Accelerating into NGSS statewide rollout event is on June 14th through 15th, and it's hosted by Imperial County Office of Education. So since the State Board adopted the California NGSS, we have partnered with the California County Superintendent's Educational Services Association, or also known as CSESA, and the California Science Project, the California Science Teachers Association, the California County Offices of Education, and our partners at K-12 Alliance West Ed to provide these California NGSS statewide rollout events. So far, we've conducted 4 phases that have focused on different aspects of the implementation of California NGSS, to understanding the standards, to understanding how to implement them in a classroom and what that can look like. So for phase 4, we focus on the California Science Framework. For phase 5, we are focusing on training leads in districts and county offices that will be conducting science adoptions within their own county offices and within their own districts. So we're very excited that we are switching gears a little bit and aligning with the state level review for science instructional materials. And so our first training of trainers, as we're calling them, for county leads and large district leads is on October 1st through 2nd, and that will be hosted by the San Joaquin County Office of Education in Stockton. So I'm really excited to see so many events that are supporting teachers and administrators and curriculum leads with implementing our new science standards, because they are probably one of the most complicated standards that we've seen. And so as much support as we can provide, I think that's only a benefit to our students across California. So switching gears to our health education framework that has been posted for public comment and review. As of last week, we've had 8 people participate in the online survey, and 1 person send in written comments. And so again, this is only the first 60-day public comment review period, so lots of time for people to get online and read our document and provide us feedback. So far the ratings from the online survey are, we have 7 excellent ratings, we have 1 good and 5 fair, we have absolutely no poor ratings. So very excited about that. And one of the best comments we've seen so far on the comment section is from a multiple subject TK through 12 teacher who says, "Thank you for this." So very exciting. So along the line of frameworks, you are getting a present. So each commissioner is going to receive a folder right now from my staff that holds the executive summaries of the History Social Science Framework and the Science Framework, along with the parent brochures that were also created. And this work is a true credit to our partnership with Sacramento County Office of Education, who had funding to develop these. And Deborah Franklin was the lead consultant that shepherded these back and forth through the many edits and approval process and design. And so I know she's not here today because she's going to be retiring. And that's really sad. I'm trying to come to grips with that, but it's a true credit to her dedication to our work in getting these accomplished. So very exciting. So please enjoy, advertise them out. We're going to have links to them on our website, and there's also links to them at the Sacramento County Office of Education. The parent brochures will be translated into Spanish, so that those can be downloaded and available, and we will be selling the executive summaries like we do for the other frameworks at $5 a piece. They will have nice binding instead of the spiral bound ones. They'll be very nicely bound. So please advertise away that these are available and useful. These are really useful professional learning tools, especially for principals and curriculum leads that may have never experienced our frameworks before, especially such large documents. They can help chunk them and understanding how they're structured and the content within them, so they can know where to dive in deeper for their professional learning. So very exciting. And my final news on my report is I have a new staff member who's joining the Curriculum Frameworks Instructional Resources Division. Her first day is today. So Miss Lindsay Weiss, Dr. Weiss, is joining us from, totally stole her from the Special Education Division, but Christian Wright still likes me, so it's all good. She comes to us with that background of understanding how to integrate curriculum and provide that inclusive instruction for all of our students across the California. So as I told my manager, she's my consultant. She's helping me with all of the different projects that we're doing and supporting everything that we're doing in Seaford. So I'm very excited to have Lindsay join us. Welcome, Lindsay. And she's a little gimpy right now. Uh, she, I get to say this, she had a roller skating accident. And so I told her she's going to fit right in with us. So welcome, Seaford. Thank you, Chair Reese.
Thank you, Dr. Gregson. Okay, so now it is time to hear a report from the State Board of Education. We have Feliza Ortiz-Licon with us. Welcome, nice to see you. And we have Patricia Rucker, Board Member Rucker.
Good morning. Okay. Good morning, and I want to welcome you all to Sacramento today. It's going to be a very fast-paced and albeit brief meeting today, but it's going to be very exciting anyway. I also am happy to be sitting here with my colleague, Feliza Ortiz-Licon. As you know, from the last board meeting, if you were able to watch it, our leader, Mike Hurst, announced that he would not be returning to the board at the end of this term and at the end of this governor's term, that he would be stepping down from his role on the board. It's been not just a record-breaking period of time in California with the work that we've done on the board, but he's been definitely a record-breaking leader with the time he spent on the board this time around, and then the first time in the first term with this governor. So while we were very pleased to hear this and to not pleased at the same time, it's been very exciting to be able to spend this time with him, to get to know him personally, and to be a part of the dynamic work that this board has had the opportunity to do. Part of that work has been the work that we've had the opportunity to do with this committee. Yesterday, I, along with Ting Sun, participated in a confirmation hearing with the Senate Rules Committee. We had a chance to talk about your work and the work that you did with the 4 frameworks we've already looked at and the health framework that you're going to be considering today. It's a certain amount of bravery to step into education leadership as you all have done. You put down your work as classroom teachers and come to Sacramento, and you sit on this dais and you do the work of creating content and creating guidance for the classrooms that you return back to. And I hope your colleagues know this. But more importantly, you give guidance to the legislature. They take a great deal of ownership in the work that you have done, and a great deal of pride in what you have crafted and what has come to be known as the California way. And as part of the conversation we had, we talked about what does it mean to give meaning to the work that you're doing, and what does it mean to try to explain to everybody else what we are doing. You all have been that voice to make plain what we're trying to do, but more importantly, not just how to do it, but why the way we've chosen to do it has to be done in that way. So I really want to thank you, because you helped us to give voice to so many questions and answers that went unquestioned, went unasked, and for a long time went unanswered. So I have learned a lot from you, and I'm very excited to see you here today, and I'm very pleased to be able to share this time with you today. Ditto.
Thank you, Board Member Rucker, for reminding us of Dr. Hurst's legacy, and always just having such encouraging words for us and for reminding us of our impact as a commission, and we really appreciate that. Okay, so moving on, we're going to move to the Health Subject Matter Committee. The Health Education Framework is now in its first 60-day public review and comment period. The draft framework is posted on the CDE website along with an online survey. The public comment and review period will end on Friday, June 29th at our July meeting. At our July meeting, we will have a preliminary report on the survey results, and at our September meeting, we will take action to recommend the Health Education Framework to the State Board. Between July and September, the Health Subject Matter Committee needs to meet to discuss comments and suggested edits from the field and prepare its advice to the IQC. There is a proposed meeting date of August 13th, 2018 for the Health Subject Matter Committee meeting. The Health SMC meeting will be in the morning, followed by the already scheduled IQC Science Adoption Public Comment meeting in the afternoon. So commissioners, do you have any comments? Okay, so hearing none, I call for a motion to approve the August 13th, 2018 meeting date for the Health Subject Matter Committee.
I so move.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Wu and seconded by Commissioner Diaz. Any discussion? Okay. Any public comment? Okay, so let's have a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Anyone abstain from voting? Okay, the motion carries. Are there any other matters, public comment or non-agenda items?
Good morning, Chair Reed. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Daley Jordan Cook. I am an elementary educator and a proud member of the California Teachers Association. Some of you know I come here quite regularly and am very proud to witness this very fine work you're doing. I'm standing before you today to really point to the Health Framework 60-day public comment. And I wanted to tell you that the over 300,000 members of CTA very passionately care about health education in California today. So look forward to a very clear letter from CTA. We take stakeholder comments, and many of the committees of State Council have very strong ideas about health education. But I do want to stand up today and for the California Teachers Association say, we really appreciate your attention to what sex trafficking is doing to youth in this state. And we are so proud that that is part of our health framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, so next is the Science Subject Matter Committee.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the Science Subject Matter Committee to order. If you're a member of the Science SMC, please put your nameplate up. If you are not a member, please turn your nameplate down. The members of the Science SMC are Co-Chair Brommelstick and myself, Commissioners Chapman, Fairchild, Flores, Renteria, Wu, and of course IQC Chair Reese. Seaford's staff to the Science SMC are Brian Boyd and Cliff Rudnick. And at this time, Brian Boyd will give us an update on the 2018 Science Instructional Materials Adoption.
So this morning I will provide an update on the Science Instructional Materials Reviewer Training that took place during the week of April 16th through the 20th, 2018 at the Doubletree Hotel in Sacramento. On Monday, April 16th, the CDE staff conducted a facilitator training, and during this time, CDE staff reviewed the agenda and activities for the week with the facilitators. On Tuesday, April 17th, the reviewers arrived in the room, and the room was filled with anticipation. This day was a day making about 5 years in the making. The reviewers were excited, and it's been almost 12 years since our last instructional materials adoption in science. There's a great need for NGSS aligned instructional materials. So the first day of training provided an overview of the adoption work plan and an overview of the evaluation criteria. We also provided time for reviewers to fill out the numerous travel forms, reimbursements, to verify where they wanted their materials to be sent. For some reviewers, they would receive a URL or a tiny flash drive. Others received pallets of instructional materials. On Wednesday and Thursday, we walked the reviewers through the process of reviewing materials and how the components fit together. They were trained on how to use the standards maps and the criteria maps. I would also like to highlight that our standards maps cover the 3 dimensions: the science and engineering practices, the disciplinary core ideas, the cross-cutting concepts, as well as the performance expectations. Dr. Gregson led the reviewers to 2 activities, which helped them identify the 3 dimensions and phenomenon in the instructional materials. The reviewers also participated in a mock deliberation process. On Thursday afternoon, a reviewer approached me and said, On Tuesday, I was totally overwhelmed. I didn't see how all the everything fit together. And after this training, now I can see how this process works. I am ready and confident I can review the materials. And I heard that from numerous reviewers. It was a little bit overwhelming on the first day of training, but by the very end of the process, they truly understood how all of the components fit together, how to use all the criteria maps, and have all the tools available to them and how to use those. On Friday, the publishers presented their programs and instructed the panelists on how to navigate the programs. The publishers explained on how their programs work and how it aligns to the standards and criteria maps. In short, the CDE staff and the IQC commissioners pulled together to make this a successful science instructional materials reviewer training. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your update. So at this time, I'm going to ask the commission if they have any questions or comments.
Hi, I just want to say this is my first time going through the process as a facilitator. As a reviewer, it was a little different. But I want to say that this was so well run. And I also heard those same comments about, you know, I'm confused. What am I doing here? What did I get myself into? And what exactly am I doing from both the teachers and for the contact experts? So I just want to say thank you. And also to all the CFER staff, because I asked a lot of questions and my committee had a lot of questions, and you were very kind with your time and assisting. And I know that brought down a lot of effective filters for a lot of the people who were eavesdropping on our conversation, as they were telling me. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. I totally agree with you, and I'm going to say I'm really proud myself to be part of this group and part of this process. And so, yeah, I agree. Any other comments or questions?
So it was also my first time, but I just want to point out, I love the mats. I think it was the ones that we had on our tables of placemats, because it was such a great breakdown. And I know for a fact that science is not my area of expertise, but that week just felt like the perfect training for anyone to just come in and, do you want to understand NGSS? Like, here you go. And the way it was done, it was a little overwhelming on the first day, even for us facilitators. But I think it was just so organized that, like, I still can go to my tabs and I understand everything. And the activities were very well thought out. So I just really appreciate the whole team, because it just made it very easy to facilitate. And I think that was also a part of what I was a little afraid of, because I didn't bring the expertise in science, but just being given so many resources, it made it so much easier. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the group? Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the public? I'm seeing none, and therefore at this time I'd like to close the subject matter committee for science.
All right, good morning. I call the Visual and Performing Arts Subject Matter Committee to order. If you're a member of the VAPA SMC, please put your nameplate up. If you're not a member, please turn your nameplate down. These members are myself, Vice Chair Murphy Corwin, Commissioners Chow, Diaz, Laura, Nadis Wu, and Chair Reese. Our Seaford staff with the VAPA SMC are Letty Krause and Constantino Silva. We will start today with a brief update on the status of the VAPA Standards Revision Project by the fabulous Letty Krause.
The VAPA Standards Advisory Committee, that we also call the VAPA SAC, finished its work on May the 4th, and that's when the VAPA SAC voted unanimously to recommend the draft of revised standards to the Commission for your review in July. The draft, along with a final list of requested revisions, is with the Wested writing team right now, and we're working with them to ensure that the final draft that we receive on June 15th will accurately reflect the wishes of the final, the VAPA-SAC discussions that we had out of the May meeting.
Thank you.
Our process was complicated. We had 5 disciplines, but we were able to be successful thanks to strong planning and facilitation support from our administrators, Constantino Silva and Cliff Rudnick, and our consultants from several divisions, including arts consultants Mary Rice and Jack Mitchell, who helped ensure we understood concerns from the field, and Lindsay Weiss, formerly from special education, who helped lay a foundation for inclusion in our standards document, and Paula Evans, whose knowledge of computer science was helpful to our media arts group. We also had vital support from Director Gregson, who intervened and kept us on track when we wandered from standards into framework territory. And finally, thank you to Commissioners Tonkovich, Murphy Corwin, and Wu for supporting the work of the VAPASAC. They are well versed in the nuances of our process. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Letty, for that update. Do any committee members have any questions or comments about the VAPA standards? Yes.
Yes, I would just like to add that it was my pleasure and honor to have attended several of the sessions of the Standards Committee, and it is really a wonderful process. I want to commend all the staff from Seaford, all the members of the Standards Committee who really showed their dedication and their focus. And even though there are 5 disciplines and sometimes they can be very unique, they are very unique in what they are doing, they all came together, and it was so exciting that last day when there was a unanimous vote for the revised standards. It was just yay. And for the first time we had the 5th discipline, which, you know, you never know how that's going to go. And it was wonderful, very smooth, wonderful transitions. I want to again thank the chair, Ms. Tonkovich, for all of her support that she showed through the entire process. But really special thank you to Dr. Kraus for everything that she did. It shows just wonderful professionalism and expertise. And again, it was my honor to be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Murphy Corwin. I agree, it was really exciting. I really enjoyed being part of that process, observing the process. Next, we have 2 action items related to a new VAPA project. We're beginning the revision of the VAPA framework. Today, we will take action on the schedule of significant events and the application for the Curriculum Frameworks and Evaluation Criteria Committee, known as CFCC. The full commission will then recommend these items to the State Board of Education for action at the board's July meeting. The draft schedule of significant events, which is your attachment 1, lays out a timeline for the 2020 Visual and Performing Arts Framework for California Public Schools, kindergarten through grade 12 VAPA framework. This timeline includes the major milestones related to the revision process, beginning with the recruitment of focus groups in March and ending with the deadline for board action in May of 2020. Important dates for the VAPA SMC and the IQC include: in November 2018, the IQC will recommend members of the CFCC and the guidelines for the VAPA framework to the SBE. IQC members will participate in the 6 meetings of the CFCC in February through August 2019. In September 2019, the IQC will approve the draft VAPA framework for public review. In January 2020, the IQC will analyze field review results and revise draft VAPA framework. In May 2020, the IQC will recommend the VAPA framework to the SBE. As we get closer to the VAPA CFCC meeting dates, we will be asking for commitments from IQC members to attend those meetings. Can I have a motion to recommend to the full commission the schedule of significant events?
So moved.
And I second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Lara, and the motion has been seconded by Commissioner Murphy Corwin. Is there any discussion of the motion? I do have a comment, but it's not a suggestion or a concern. I just thought it was interesting, when I looked at the schedule between the world language focus groups and the visual art and performing, the VAPA focus groups, they're all on the same dates except for 3 and the same times. Now, 3 commissioners are on both subject matter committees, but I'm sure there will be no conflict of interest on which focus group to attend. Also, I noticed that the CFCC meetings is also in June. Both are meeting on the same date at CDE, so I'm assuming we'll just be in different parts of the building at that time.
So the reason why we have the similar dates is that these are parallel timelines by statute, and so we have to utilize all of our resources efficiently. And so this is what we felt would best utilize all of our resources efficiently. And so again, it's, we all have to juggle, but we had to consider the larger picture and ensuring that we meet our statutory deadlines and while utilizing all of our resources efficiently.
Okay.
So just some clarification on that.
I suspected. I just thought it was interesting. Is there any other discussion of the motion? Is there any public comment on the motion? I believe we're ready to vote. Remember that only members of the subject matter committee can vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Anyone abstain from voting? The motion passes. The second item, attachment 2, is the draft application for members of the CFCC. The draft application will be reformatted into an online form and posted on the CDE webpage during a recruitment period that will extend from mid-August through mid-October of this year. Applications will be brought to the Commission in November for recommendation to the SBE. The SBE will take action to appoint members to the CFCC at the meeting in January 19th. Do any SMC members have any questions regarding the draft application?
I have a quick potential slight edit. I actually sent it off first to, it's the same one I have for world languages, depending on what happens here, just to see if it was appropriate to bring it up. I have a very quick kind of syntax suggestion and another really quick formatting suggestion for us to consider, and my heart will not be broken if we decide not to do anything with either. So the first one, on the bottom of page 3, on the question that asks about previous collaboration experience, I would like to hear the thinking of our group here regarding potentially, let me look at my original notes, making a couple of slight wording adjustments that to me I felt like carried even more strongly the intent of what the question was asking for. So where it says describe what collaboration skills you possess that will help the VAPA CFCC members work together, I was wondering about the thinking of saying describe what collaboration skills you possess that will help all of the VAPA CFCC members work collaboratively.
To build on that, I like your suggestion. What I was wondering in the title, it says previous experience, and then it asks for skills. And to me, those are two different things, experience and skills. They may have no experience, but they have skills.
Yeah.
They may have experience and no skills. So if you have a suggestion on how we can incorporate.
Or it could just as easily say, so the question, you're correct, really asks about skills. We could say collaboration skills. We could say collaboration skills and experience and remove previous. I don't know if other members of the committee would like to step in.
Any other commissioners?
I like the idea of changing it to collaboration skills and experience, and I like your wording as well.
All righty. Could you repeat that?
Would be clear, changing the title to collaborate. Were you saying changing the title to collaboration skills and experience instead of previous collaboration?
So can I read back to you what I understand you think
Please.
you might want to? So it's titled Collaboration Skills and Experience, and it reads, describe what collaboration skills you possess that will help all of the VAPA CFCC members work collaboratively to produce a document, and then it goes on.
But could I suggest that if we change the title to collaboration, experience, and skills, that first line also includes what collaboration, experience, and skills. So the title and that description is the same.
So that they're parallel.
Skills and experience also in the
I kind of like experience and skills because it's alphabetical order, but
But yes, both, please.
Or do we want experience and skills then, for both?
for collaboration.
So that it's parallel to what the title says it's asking for.
Okay, then I would like, before, I know you have more, but I want to just make a note that our deputy superintendent requested that we remove references to pre-K throughout the document.
Let me provide some clarification on that. So what it is that the statute and our Title V regulations that we mirror for our, well, that we follow for our framework requires us to have the majority of our CFCC be kindergarten through 12 teachers. So by putting pre-K in that section, we're not showing that, you know, this is K through 12. So there's just a couple areas. So in that grade levels of experience, taking out the pre-K and just putting K through 2, the years of teaching, the current title position, also changing that, but adding in a checkbox for preschool / transitional kindergarten teacher, so that we can actually really see who is who, because preschool and transitional kindergarten, as we all know, is very different than kindergarten. So being able to highlight both, so separating that out. So we would add a checkbox in the current title position that would read preschool / transitional kindergarten teacher.
And then there are several other places where we would just be removing the pre. And then one final note regarding that request, we were requested to add a sentence stating that the majority of the CFC members would be classroom teachers.
Yes,
so
please.
it's not significantly different than what you see, but with that addition.
Okay. Thank you.
And I had one more, I had a formatting one, and this is again, just me being very, just the way I am. Let's see, I think and both in the document, it should be on page 6. And currently it reads, there's a section that reads applicant certification and then a really long paragraph where they certify with one checkbox several things. And I wondered what the committee's thinking was on breaking it out. What I personally had recommended was a first part, a title that says applicant acknowledgement, and then a single checkbox like the checkboxes above that say, I understand that this application becomes public information when submitted, and then applicant certification. And I broke out that long paragraph into the remaining 3 as 3 separate bullets for them to certify. So the answers to the questions under the relationship to publisher, blah, 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 are true and correct. Next bullet, I and my supervisor are aware that while travel and per diem costs will be reimbursed, et cetera, a check mark, and a final check mark. I have discussed this application with my supervisor and received approval for release time to participate. So they would actually certify to all of those things separately.
I'd say because otherwise there may become a conflict later on with their supervisor. I see. I think.
Not like I've experienced it.
All right. Is there that I like that. Any other discussion on that? You want to repeat?
Yes.
Clarify. So the first, so the recommendation is the first checkoff would be, I understand that this application becomes public information when submitted.
Yeah.
It'll include the answers to the questions under relationship to publisher, conflict of interest, disclosures to.
May I had forwarded it via email to Alejandro because I was also looking at it in world language. Would it be appropriate for me to show you what so I can, is it appropriate for me to show because I have it typed up? Would that be okay for me to bring it over? Yeah?
Sure.
Okay.
Not a problem.
He's going to have to read it out for everybody.
Yes.
I was thinking for the record. And that's exactly what I have. Okay, perfect. So the second checkoff would be, I and my supervisor are aware that while travel and per diem costs will be reimbursed at standard state rates, no stipend is provided to members of the advisory committee. That's the second one. So the third one, the final one, would be, I have discussed this application with my supervisor and have received approval for release time to participate in all related activities.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I did have a few more things I wanted to go over with the subject matter committee.
Wait, can I just
I'm
confirm?
sorry, go ahead.
Is that what the
Let-
committee wants? Then?
Oh, any other discussion? Let me ask you, protocol, do we pass it all at the end, or do we pass each time there's an amendment? So,
You'll pass the application as amended.
okay.
But
At the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the end.
So any other discussion? Are we good with Commissioner Nade's suggestion? Yes. All right, excellent. I wanted to suggest that under current title and position, on the first page when it talks about the CFCC members, who they include, it doesn't have to list every single thing. However, there's two important positions in art ed that I would like to add to be considered. One is the teaching artist. The artist in residence is a very commonplace. It occurs quite often in the community. It's not, the teaching artist is not part of a professional organization, so it's not specifically listed here. The other one is museum educators, because for decades museum educators have been leading art education, possibly before the universities, and I could tell you several examples from the in California, including Getty from the 90s up until today, the Museum of Contemporary Art and every museum in Southern California has a really strong education and an outreach program for educators. So I would ask if we could add those. And actually, when we did the standards, there were some people who wrote down they were teaching artists when they did their profile. So how does the committee feel about adding those, teaching artist and museum educator?
This would be in that second paragraph where it says CFCC members include.
Well, I would thought we could do that. I'm going to leave that up to you, but when we have the checkbox, then I would specifically want it there.
Under the current titles and positions.
Yes,
Okay.
under current title position.
Just a comment. I'm wondering if we, I mean, I'm thinking in my mind that maybe theater organizations may be educational organizations, and so beyond museums, there may be others. So, would there be a way to capture all, not just the museums, but maybe theater companies? I mean, I could just think in my mind that there could be multiple.
Well, you could say as a teaching artist that
They fall
could
under
be,
teaching
I would,
artists?
an artist in residence. I think they would.
Okay, so
I think this might be misleading, but the professional organization is meant to capture those education organizations.
Like the theater organization possibly, or the.
Right, because then again, this is just data that we're collecting. The real true information that we glean is from the resumes. So you can see all of their experience and pull out if they're a museum educator or an artist in residence. We want to be careful of this becoming an exhaustive list because that's impossible. It is really around the categories that are stated in the Title V regulations, and that for more information, you go into the application and the resume. So that's where you would see the artist in residence and museum educator, because those two elements are not part of our Title V regulations. It's around community members, administrators, and teachers, and that, hence why we have the positions that we do under that checkbox.
So if there were a teaching artist and museum educator, which box would they check then?
They would check the professional organization representative / staff. And then you would, or community member, and then you would go into their resume and read what type of experience that they had. And that's where you would see if they're a museum educator or an artist in residence.
I could see the artist in residence being a community member, but to me, a community member is not a skilled, trained professional. I know you don't want an exhaustive list. I just think those two positions are really, really in the forefront and being used today in art education, and I'm not certain that those other check boxes are specific enough, even though it would be listed in the resume.
So then I'd like to go back to the purpose of the application. When you have the beginning of this application is where the checkboxes are. That is for us to determine which component do they fit in under our Title V regulations. That is the only purpose of that checkbox. It is not to see the details of their experience, because the details of their experience come through their written components within the application and then their resume. And so it is our due diligence to go through those pieces to determine the experience that they have and use that during your conversation when you are recommending the applicants. So that isn't, so again, I'm going to go back that the current title and position checkbox is only for us to look at which category do they fall under for the Title V regulations purposes.
I see. So it's more for data collection in a sense.
Correct. It is not about making sure we're inclusive of everybody. That is for the resume and for your discussion.
Well, then could we go back to the second paragraph where they include in that description instead of the checkbox? Could we include those two descriptors in that second paragraph where it
What
says
page are you-
CFCC members include? The first page, single subject and multiple subject credentialed teachers, school district and county administrators, college and university personnel representing academic departments and school of education. I would even put after that, maybe after the semicolon, museum educators, teaching artists and representatives of citizen group and educational organizations, because I can ask my committee, but I really feel strongly that those two should be included somewhere and that we pull them in. So what does the committee think?
So this beginning part, just for clarification for your discussion, is again, it's around the Title V regulations that we have to follow. That is why that language is in there. I would suggest that we include the language that you're talking about in our marketing flyer and all of our recruitment information that we blast out to everybody, because then we can really target, because that's what they'll see first. Many of our applicants don't necessarily read that first page very well, but they do read the marketing flyer that we use. So I would encourage you to consider using that language within our marketing flyer versus within the application, because the application follows the Title V regulations.
All right. Would Letty be in charge of that marketing flyer?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So any more discussion on that? I will go with Letty including that on the marketing flyer. I did have one more suggestion. I'm hoping it doesn't go against Title V, but when we talked, the paragraph about expertise and leadership, and that has to do with experience and expertise in VAPA education, they could have 30 years in education, and if you're aware of this in the last few decades, there's been a real paradigm shift in how we view arts education. So from a very formalistic focus on materials and techniques, we're going, like with NCAS, more conceptual into the processes. I'm wondering if we could add here, or perhaps in their resume, something about their teaching philosophy where they see the arts fitting in education. Like if it is, they could, there is no one right answer, but it would give us this idea that they've made that shift. And how can I say this? So are they embracing arts integration? Are they thinking of art as civic engagement? Are they thinking of 21st century skills or global competency? Are they, and so forth. So I was thinking, I personally would like to know their teaching philosophy, because they could be teaching 30 years and not have the kind of approach that would match NCAS. So committee, what do you think about including somewhere, either with the resume or under areas of expertise, including a teaching philosophy?
If I could,
Oh, go ahead.
if I could just say something. I understand what you're saying, but I also feel that this question does need to be very open-ended to allow our applicants to answer, and it would be certainly my hope that their philosophy would come out in their response. I don't know how you can possibly describe expertise in VAPA and expertise in providing effective instruction if you don't somehow incorporate your philosophy to teaching. So I would like to leave it
Right.
open-ended.
I can see how they could leave that out with their expertise, and I'm trying to avoid
Then
any
we probably
surprises.
wouldn't, perhaps we wouldn't choose those people.
Can I interject something, please? I think it's our role to not subscribe or lead applicants to subscribe to a particular vein of philosophy. I think that process happens when we objectively review and comment on it as a group. And then when those individuals come together, that they that's part of the public process, and that it's okay to have diversity, and it's okay to have really rich, heterogeneous kind of philosophies. That's what makes it great. So I would advocate to leave it as is and accept anyone who wishes to apply, and not perhaps appear that we're putting a thumb on the scale,
Well,
rather leaving it open.
I did say there's no one right answer. I'm just curious about their approach as more information, not putting them in a box, and like I said, there is no one right answer. I was just curious because to me, their experience and expertise, they might be saying, well, perhaps you can glean from it. I just would have liked to have seen something more about where they see the arts moving. And this is a curriculum teaching framework. So is there any other comment from the committee to leave as is, to include it?
I would say leave it because it's not our job to tell anybody what philosophy, or to even think what philosophy is correct or not correct or any of that. And I think it's better if we get that variety. We want to see those 30-year teachers, and we want to see those 2 or 3-year teachers who have very different views, because they need to come together, because this framework is for all of them. It's not just for the people of the quote right philosophy or anything like that.
Okay, well, I don't want to be misunderstood. I said there is no one right. 30-year teachers like myself have a very current philosophy. I'm not age and number of teachers. I had a very new teacher who had an old-fashioned. I'm not trying to pigeonhole. I'm trying to get more information. And so I think people, you might have misread my suggestion. It's just a way to, when we select the applicants, to have more information, not to say, we're not going to choose you because of this or this, but just like when we look for collaboration, experience, and skills, there's certain mindset that would be a better fit for the curriculum framework. That's all. If you want to leave it as is, fine. Okay. So, is there any other discussion regarding the draft application? Can I have a motion to recommend to the full commission the draft CFCC application as amended by the SMC?
So moved.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Naditz. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
The motion has been seconded by Commissioner Murphy-Corwin. Is there any discussion of the motion? Is there any public comment on the motion? I believe that we're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Anyone abstain from voting? The motion passes. Is there any public comment? If none, the meeting of the VAPA SMC is now closed.
Okay. I call the World Languages SMC to order. If you are a member of the World Language SMC, please put your nameplate up. If you are not a member, please turn your nameplate down. Just as a reminder, the members are myself, Vice Chair Diaz, Commissioners Bromelsek, Chow, Munoz, Renteria, Tonkovich, and IQC Chair Reese. First up, Alejandro Hernandez of the Seaford Division will provide an update on the progress of the World Language Standards Advisory Committee and the work they've done in developing the World Language Standards.
There we go. Okay. Third try. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. Unlike Letty Krause, we are still halfway through our process. We have met twice. The World Language Standards Advisory Committee has met twice. We have 2 more meetings to go. The next one is scheduled for next week. I do want to share a couple of highlights. During our first meeting, we had Commissioner Naditz attend and participate. During our second meeting, we had Commissioner Naditz and also Commissioner Munoz. During our second meeting, we had many fabulous things happen. We had 3 presentations. One was led by Dr. Wise, Lindsay Wise. and she talked about including students with disabilities. We had a second presentation from Gina Garcia Smith, and she talked about the seal of biliteracy, dual immersion, the ELD standards. And our third presenter was David Eberwein. He's deaf, and he led a conversation about American Sign Language and how the members of the SAC could include support for students who want to learn ASL. And that was not just a regular presentation, that was really a call to action. And it infused a lot of the conversations that have happened since. And even now, we continue collaborating with other CDE staff who have that as a responsibility, supporting ASL. And so I'm seeing, as a result of all this, advocacy happening for more students who are deaf and so on, who can get the seal of biliteracy. So this was, for me, unexpected, and it's still paying off. I have a couple other comments about the framework process, but at this point, I think if anybody else has any comments, anybody who has attended, any comments or questions?
Perfect. That was my next step too. So that was well done. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your work and leadership and guidance and facilitation and all of the help of the CDE staff. And I know that one of the things, kind of echoing what came up earlier when we were talking about the new health education framework and so on, if you didn't know, the world language community is absolutely ecstatic that we are at this phase. They're just giddy with anticipation that we're going to have standards and we're going to have a framework. So there is a lot of buzz and a lot of energy in the world language community in the state right now, because we've at CDE have been able to take this step, and the group that we've pulled together really is quite remarkable. I will say it again, I think we said it after the first one too, if you haven't seen the world language community come together, it doesn't look like some of the other groups. They're very overt in their happiness to see each other and their happiness to be together. The work, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're about to see kind of next week, they're going to see kind of the unveiling of the second draft, because this is a drafting process. So our writer has been working incredibly hard and diligently on the draft framework based on the guidance he is receiving from the SAC, from the Standards Advisory Committee. So next week, I know they are looking forward to seeing that second draft and continuing their work. Would anyone else like to comment? Okay. Thank you very much. Now we move our discussion to some important actions to begin the work on the development of the World Languages Framework for California schools. We have 2 action items related to the World Language Framework, all of which we are recommending to the full commission. These are the schedule of significant events and the application for the Curriculum Framework and Evaluation Criteria Committee. The full commission will recommend these 2 items to the State Board of Education for action at the board's July meeting. The draft schedule of significant events, which is attachment 1, lays out a timeline for the 2020 World Languages Framework for California schools. It begins with focus group recruitment, which is going on right now, activities, and ends with the deadline for board action. It is important to note that this timeline does not include every single event related to the World Language Development process, but only the major milestones. So some of the important dates for the World Language Subject Matter Committee and IQC include, in November of 2018, this year, the IQC will recommend members of the Curriculum Framework and Evaluation Criteria Committee and the guidelines for the World Language Framework to the State Board of Education. And then from February through August of 2019, the SMC members will participate in the 6 meetings of the CFCC. In September of 2019, the IQC will approve the draft of the World Language Framework for public review. In January of 2020, the IQC will analyze the field review results and revise the draft of the World Language Framework. And also in January 2020, the IQC will recommend the World Language Framework to the State Board of Education. So as we get closer to 2019, we will be asking for commitments from IQC members to attend the 6 CFCC meetings. At this time, can I have a motion to recommend to the full commission the schedule of significant events?
I so move.
Thank you. A motion has been made by Commissioner Diaz. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. The second by Commissioner Bromacek. Is there any discussion of the motion? Any public comment on that motion? So I believe we're ready to vote. Remember that only members of the subject matter committee can vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Are there any abstentions? Okay. The motion passes. The second item is the application for members of the CFCC for the World Languages Framework. The draft application is attachment 2. It will be reformatted into an online form and posted on the CDE webpage during a recruitment period that will extend from early August through mid-October of this year. Applications will be brought to the Commission in November for recommendation to the State Board with board action to appoint members to the CFCC at its January 2019 meeting. First of all, if it's okay, I know, Alejandro, you had said, did you have something you wanted to say at this point?
Well, I just wanted to share that after 2 weeks, we had 11 applications. 2 weeks later, we had 17, but as of today, we have 84 applications for this.
Yes. There has been extensive outreach from the field, I must say. I'm really glad to hear that. Does Duarte Silva already know? No? I'll let him know. Okay. That's really good to hear because I was about to make a plea out to all, and the application window is still open, so it's not like it's closed. The more applicants, the merrier. So we definitely want to see broad representation. So we encourage you. Sometimes it's hard to get representation from all the different kinds of people that we need input from. So while we might have 84 applicants, we don't know yet that it represents that broad representation. So I still encourage you to please send the word out that the application period is open for these focus groups. Hold on, I lost my place. Oh, there we go. For the online form posted. So do any SMC members have any questions regarding the draft application?
So just to know, we'll be making the same changes regarding the preschool / transitional kindergarten checkbox and taking off the pre-K and just having the K-12.
Right.
Thank you. Yes.
For clarification, for this application, can we do the same thing that we did for the last one to make sure the acknowledgement? Okay.
I was going to propose exactly the same amendments be put forth for this one as well.
Yes.
Assuming our committee agrees.
Clarify then. So then it'll be 2 sections, right? We're talking about the acknowledgements and certification, the same checkoff boxes that were suggested for the VAPA framework.
Yes.
Focus group.
And also the slight wording change. I think it's at the top of page 4 in the world language application where we changed it to the word, we changed it to skills, collaboration skills and experience, and also to work collaboratively as opposed to work together.
Yes. So they'll be
Thank you.
Parallel.
Okay. Are there any other questions regarding the draft application from the committee? Okay. Hold on one second. Any questions? Can we have a motion to approve, to recommend to the full commission the draft CFCC application as amended?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Munoz has moved. Is there a second?
I second.
And Commissioner Bromacek has seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any public comment on this motion? I believe we are ready to vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Anyone abstain from voting? The motion passes.
Is there any other public comment for the World Language Committee? All right, thank you. This closes the meeting of the World Language SMC.
Good morning. I'd like to call the History Social Science Subject Matter Committee to order. If you are a member of this committee, please put your nameplate up. The members include Commissioner Flores, Lara, Munoz, Tonkovich, and Commissioner Reese. The Seaford staff are Dr. Ken McDonald and Cliff Rudnick. Today we have some important actions to begin the work on the upcoming Ethnic Studies model curriculum. You will recall that we've had an informational update on this project at our March meeting. Today we have 3 action items related to the model curriculum project, all of which we are recommending to the full commission. These are the schedule of significant events, the application of the Model Curriculum Advisory Committee, and the guidelines that will direct the drafting of the model curriculum. The full commission will recommend these 3 items to the State Board of Education for action at the board's July meeting. The draft schedule of significant events, Attachment 1, lays out a timeline for the 2020 Ethnic Studies model curriculum. It begins with a public input webinar that the CDE hosted in January and ends with the deadline for the board action that was included in Assembly Bill 2016. It is important to note that this timeline does not include every single event related to the curriculum development process, but only the major milestones. Important dates for the History Social Science Subject Matter Committee and the IQC include November 2018. The IQC recommends members of the Model Curriculum Advisory Committee to the State Board. February through April 2019, SMC members will participate in 3 meetings of the Model Curriculum Advisory Committee. These meetings will be very similar to those of the Curriculum Framework and Evaluation Criteria Committee. May 2019, the IQC approves the draft curriculum for public review. September 2019, the IQC analyzes the results of the field review and makes revision to the draft model curriculum. November 2019, the IQC recommends the model curriculum to the SBE. As we get closer to the 2019, we will be asking for commitments from IQC members to attend the 3 advisory committee meetings. Can I have a motion to recommend to the full commission the schedule of significant events?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Lara. Is there a second?
Second. Oops.
Thank you, Commissioner Tonkovich. Is there any discussion of the motion? Is there any public comment on the motion? I believe we are ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Anyone abstain? The motion passes. The second item is the application for members of the Model Curriculum Advisory Committee. The legislation that authorizes this project directs the Commission to work with faculty of ethnic studies programs at universities and colleges with ethnic studies programs and a group of representatives of local educational agencies, a majority of whom are kindergarten to 12th grade teachers, inclusive teachers who have relevant experience or education background in the study and teaching of ethnic studies. The draft application, Attachment 2, will be reformatted into an online form and posted on the CDE webpage during a recruitment period that will extend from late July through mid-October of this year. Applicants will be brought to the Commission in November for recommendation to the State Board, with Board action to appoint members to the Advisory Committee as its January 2019 meeting. Do any SMC members have any questions regarding the draft application?
I'd just like to note that on this application as well, we will be separating out the preschool/transitional kindergarten from the K-12.
Can I have a motion to recommend to the full commission the draft advisory committee application?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, I was just wondering, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but don't we have to also think about that application acknowledgement and certification box, to making that amendment as well? This beyond the pre-K transitional kindergarten change?
Yes, thank you. That's why you're the chair. So I'm going to go along with what SBE person said earlier, and that's ditto. So do we all, is that?
So you'd like the same changes we made in the world language in the VAP application, just to separate those out into 3 certification?
Yes, they had a very detailed discussion, and I agree with that. So any comments from the committee on that? Okay, yes.
Board Member Rucker.
I do want to remind the it is on. I do want to remind the commission that this work group will be a little different from some of your other subject matter groups, because you will have university faculty who will be part of the instructional core of educators on this panel. And so when you think about what the release time issue is, the release time is defined differently at the university level than it is for K-12. So you may have to think about what it is you're asking for with the universities in contracting for the time that these faculty will be using. Some of them, community service or community work or engagement of this type is part of their work, particularly for the University of California. And for faculty from the CSUs, this is part of the collaboration they already are expected to be doing. So the release time issue is not the same thing. So I just want you to be mindful of that as you put this application together.
So would it be appropriate to say that the release time should be fitting to their position as it applies? As it applies to the position in the institution or the level of teaching level? Something like that?
So we're looking for everybody else, we're looking for on page 6, the very top paragraph.
Could you just put the words as needed or as appropriate?
As appropriate. Mm-hmm.
Looking at page 6. Okay, so looking at top of page 6, so it would be, I have discussed this application with my supervisor and have received approval for release time to participate in these related activities as it applies or as needed or as appropriate, something like that? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so moving forward, can I have a motion to recommend to the full commission the draft advisory committee application?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Lara. A second? Second. Thank you, Commissioner Flores. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any public comment on the motion? I believe we are ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. The final item for our consideration today is the guidelines document attachment 3. Whenever we undertake a curriculum project, the Commission recommends and the Board approves a set of directions that will guide the contracted writer and the advisory committee in their work. The statements in this guidelines are based upon the language in the statute authorizing the model curriculum project and the public comments that were received during the public input webinar that took place in January. It is important to note that the guidelines are set of general principles. They are not intended to specify every single thing that will appear in the curriculum. The goal is to provide direction without putting unnecessary constraints on the primary writer or the model curriculum advisory committee. Remember that the full model curriculum will come back to us for editing, and there will be a public review prior to our recommendation of the model curriculum to the State Board. Janelle Hope, who we met last time, of the Seaford staff will briefly walk us through the guidelines. Oh, and she's here. Do any SMC members have any questions regarding the draft guidelines?
Okay, so I just have well, we don't have questions, but I do have a quick sort of justification regarding how we came up with the guidelines. So the Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Guidelines are based off of the authorizing statute, so Assembly Bill 2016, as well as feedback that we collected from a public webinar held on January 9th, 2018, that was attended by 74 ethnic studies educators and advocates across the state. The guidelines also take into consideration other public comment that we've received. These guidelines are broken up into 5 different areas: statutory requirements, general principles, course outlines, audience, administrative and teacher support. So I want to just give a little bit of context and background on how we came up with each of the guidelines for those 5 areas. Statutory requirement, again, these are guidelines that directly reflect the authorizing statute, as well as other legal requirements for the curriculum in California. Thus, the curriculum will need to be a guide for districts, meet the A through G requirements as set forth by the University of California and California State University, and also be in accordance with Section 508 of the United States Workforce Rehabilitation Act. During the webinar, several educators reiterated the need for the model curriculum to also meet the A through G requirements, specifically A, as it would help support districts who currently offer ethnic studies courses that are not A through G approved. Number 2, guiding general principles, these guidelines call for the ethnic studies model curriculum to be consistent with the recent history social science framework, California Common Core, state standards for English, language arts, and literacy and history, as well as technical subjects when appropriate. This section of the guidelines also begins to address some of the feedback that we also received in the webinar regarding the founding of ethnic studies, the overall learning objectives of the discipline, calls for the ethnic studies model curriculum to have a decolonial approach was some of the language that they used, and for the curriculum to not solely be history and oppression focused, but to provide room for students to reimagine new futures and possibilities. Moreover, this section of the guidelines will help set the tone for the model curriculum by calling for the work to be written in inclusive and accessible language for various audiences, and at its core to value civic engagement. Number 3, the course outline section. These guidelines reiterate the charge made in the authorizing statute regarding the inclusion of course outlines. They also respond to questions asked during our webinar. One was, what kinds of course outlines should be included in the model curriculum? Participants overwhelmingly expressed that they would like to see course outlines and instructional materials that are reflective of the regional, statewide, and national perspectives, and outlines that engage multiple languages and disciplines while taking a more thematic approach. Moreover, given that ethnic studies is currently being taught either as a standalone elective or a course integrated into existing traditional courses, participants also expressed the need for having outlines that would allow for either structure, so either a standalone structure or an ethnic studies course that gets integrated into your history social science course or an English course. Number 4, audience. These 3 guidelines address the ethnic studies model curriculum, in particular the audience of students, teachers, and administrators from various backgrounds and grade levels. Webinar participants discussed some of the hostility and challenges that they were confronted with by administrators and students, as well as some conservative interest groups. The guidelines reiterate that ethnic studies is inclusive and that there is much to be learned from the discipline regardless of race, class, and other identity markers. Additionally, one of the more generative discussions from the webinar was around ethnic studies pedagogies, which is a guideline that comes out. Participants again posited that the ethnic studies model curriculum should engage pedagogies that are both student as well as community responsive and promote socio-emotional development. Several participants identified participatory active research, or PAR, as well as YPAR, which is youth participatory active research, as pedagogical tools that they would like to see included in the model curriculum. For additional context for folks who might not be familiar with PAR or YPAR, it emerges out of critical education and youth studies, most frequently employed as a research method and pedagogical tool. It helps promote civic, socio-emotional, and identity development Youth learn research skills, methods, and theories to then use as tools to confront issues in their communities, at school and at home. So an example of YPAR in my work at a South Sacramento high school, I've taught Black girls how to conduct oral history interviews. They then go out, they conduct interviews with their communities to learn more about the history. They learn how to transcribe those documents. They then are able to archive them. So we're teaching students how to become researchers, as well as how to be change agents within their community. So that's an example of YPAR and some of the pedagogical tools that some of the participants said that they would like to see reflected in the model curriculum. And then finally, 5, there was a stress on administrative and teacher support. These guidelines, again, emerged out of a webinar question where we asked, what are some of the challenges educators are encountering while teaching ethnic studies? Beyond calls for obviously additional funding, because everyone wants funding and everyone needs funding, which is valid, many requested support with professional development. They called for the inclusion of resources to support teachers with non-ethnic studies backgrounds, and resources that would help district and school administrators better understand the discipline to bolster support for instruction and implementation. Participants also asked for instructional resources, in particular multimedia resources and materials that would also support teacher collaboration. And that concludes sort of my little breakdown of where the guidelines are coming from.
Thank you.
Just
So where do I sign up?
And so to add to your discussion, in your red action folder, you'll find the actual language from the legislation AB 2016 and a public comment we received from CSBA regarding the ethnic studies model curriculum.
Well, I really like the inclusion of course, supporting the history social science framework and the Common Core standards, and of course, you know, moving away from not just history, but what you said about reimagining the future. And I think that's really an important component of ethnic studies to help our students. And your field work that you did with your students is really helping them to research and kind of apply what things can be done, right? So great. All right. Is there any discussion? Let me find my spot on the motion. Did we make a motion, Commissioner Reese?
Yes, so you're on page 21.
Yep.
So first, you'll want to have a discussion if there's any edits to the guidelines, if you are comfortable with recommending these to the full commission. So you want to make sure you cover that part.
Okay, so subject matter committee, as like Dr. Gregson said, is there any modifications, any edits, any recommendations, feedback? Yes, Commissioner Lara.
Yes, so I just want to say I really appreciate incorporating a lot of the comments from the webinar. You know, I think that's really important in moving forward, that we take as much public input as possible. Just really thinking of how diverse our state is and how many different needs and regional needs and those kind of things being considered as well. I thought that was really important. So thank you for doing that. This is a great criteria. I support it and I want to move forward with it.
Great. I too appreciated the detail. All right, so can I have a motion to recommend to the full commission the draft guidelines?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Lara. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Commissioner Flores. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, then we are ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there, before we go ahead and vote, is there any public comment on our motion? Okay, we're ready to vote. All in favor? Anyone oppose? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Okay, I'd like to call any public comment, any speakers that may have any feedback for the IQC at this time on this subject. Okay. Since there's none, I will go ahead and close the History Social Science Subject Matter Committee. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so lunch has arrived. Before we move on to item number 6 on the agenda, how much time do we want to take for lunch? It's 11:25.
30 minutes.
We want to go for like maybe 45 minutes?
30.
30, everyone's saying 30 minutes. Okay.
30.
Good? Okay. Tell you what, why don't we reconvene at noon? That'll give us 35 minutes. Take. All right, we'll reconvene at noon. Okay, welcome back from lunch. We are now going to reconvene as a full commission, so if you could please put your nameplate up. Great. So we are now going to have an update by Dr. Gregson on the statewide system of school support.
Yes, so I am officially taking my executive director hat off for a little bit. And so I'm here in front of you as the director of the Curriculum Frameworks Instructional Resources Division and also the co-captain of the internal CDE team on the statewide system of support. So two roles there. Today's presentation is on the statewide system of support is somewhat unique as I'll be summarizing the work that began about a year ago. But a year ago, we were very new with the term of statewide system of support as we were working through the ESSA state plan and looking at what does a statewide system of support mean? What is it? And so my goal is to summarize the information that's been presented over the past 4 state board meetings. And so Board Member Rucker and Felice Ortiz-Lacone, forgive me because you've heard this many times. And so we'll find out if I'm successful at the end, if I've summarized it well. So first is the July 2017 state board meeting began at a high level with understanding the system of support goal, which you see in front of you. As we've been working through understanding how the state system of support will look and listening to stakeholder groups, the focus on building capacity so that communities can sustain improvement has resonated the most throughout our work. And you can see that within the goal. This is the goal and what we're working towards. Okay? It's a way to test our actions so that we can ask ourselves if what we're developing or implementing is aligned with what we're working towards. And I've highlighted out that each student is served, that we're building that capacity and we're effectively addressing the inequities because that is our goal every day as educators. So before we can talk about the current and future, we need to understand where we've been and what we've learned. It's important not only to learn from our past practices, but also distill this learning into our guiding principles as moving forward. So some of us may remember what support looked like prior to the local control funding formula. My own personal experience with this included being a principal at a restructured school under program improvement 5-year plus and working with a team around the essential program components that were a checklist. And working through that checklist to look at, okay, do we have everything on the checklist in place? What it didn't take into account for on this checklist is the context of the students that I was serving in my role as principal. It didn't take into context my district's ability to support the school. So it was missing some key elements in trying to navigate. I was lucky because I worked with a county office team that understood those pieces and helped me navigate through them, but that may not have been the case for a lot of principals across the state. And so again, the foundation was a checklist. Okay? So this is prior to local control funding formula. So let's contrast that with what we're looking at now, with what support looks like after our local control funding formula. So the first column shows the before. Again, checklisty, packaged approaches, not taking into consideration all of the different contexts a school has and works under, okay? And also the redundancy and contradictions that may come with state and federal programs and navigating those. But after, we'll look at the other column, is looking at partnerships and collaboration and understanding district and school context through root cause analysis, identifying the strengths and the needs, not only of the school, but the district as a whole. so that we're tailoring our assistance through a systematic approach and that we're not working with schools in isolation. Because while I was working on my checklist, the district was continuing their practices, so it was very disconnected. That's changed. We start with our local education agencies. We start with the district to look at how we can collaborate and help them build capacity to support their schools. So these shifts are currently taking place across the state, but that doesn't mean that there aren't challenges. But I believe that with everyone's dedication to shifting their approach to what it looks like after the LCFF, that we'll see those changes through our student outcomes. So can you see the parallel, the differences between before and after? And I'm sure some of you have experienced that before and after as well. So two of the biggest learnings from our previous school and district change efforts and our stakeholder feedback, and of course now the LCFF statute, are here. We learned that we need to build capacity to support schools rather than focusing on schools in isolation, like I said, because each school is individualized, but yet they are under the umbrella of the district support. And sometimes our systematic pieces are really about the district and not necessarily about the school. So how do we work with them in tandem to create change for both? And also that we can't create a one-size-fits-all. The checklists for my school didn't work because I was a bilingual school, 5-year plus program improvement under a restructuring plan. There's a lot of little elements that a package program wouldn't fit. So we've learned that one size does not fit all, that our approach to improvement work needs to be with focus on the context of each school and each LEA, and it needs to be unique and requires individualized support. So other pieces, through our building an understanding of what support looks like, we've been engaged in conversations with stakeholders throughout the state. I'm co-captain, my other captain is Melanie Sheppy, and her division has been traveling across the state and getting input from stakeholder feedback on what does this look like for you? What does support look like? So this slide represents a synthesis of that feedback. You'll notice that stakeholders want to build skill in looking at their data, both qualitative and quantitative data. They want to engage improvement efforts with others through partnerships and sharing of best practices. But it's not just the sharing of best practices. They want to understand, how do you implement that best practice? What were the steps that you went through to implement the best practices? Because we can all understand them, but it's really about the implementation of those best practices. So they want to learn that and understand those pieces around implementing. And then the last bullet point is a huge focus right now for LEAs. They want to build capacity to engage with stakeholders throughout their LCAP process. How do we do that throughout the entire time? Okay. So that's feedback from our stakeholders. So let's dive into the statewide system of support. I'm going to give you a crash course and what it currently includes and where we're headed. So the system of support has 3 levels. Our first level is a lot of what we work on as the Instructional Quality Commission. It is those resources and supports available to every single school and district and student across the state. Right? Those are our standards, our curriculum frameworks, the instruction materials, our model curriculums. Your work as a commission is all about level 1 work. So those resources that are available to all students, that we want all schools to know and understand in supporting their students. Level 2 is the differentiated assistance. And I'm going to dive into that the deepest right now because that's where a lot of our work has been focused over the past year, is the differentiated assistance. I want to highlight, though, that the differentiated assistance is grounded in a partnership with the local education agency, CDE, the collaborative CCEE, right? The California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, and our county offices of education. So differentiated assistance is grounded in that partnership so that we are coordinated and aligned in the support we're providing for our local education agencies. And like I said, I'll dive into that in the next few slides. For level 3, our intensive support, that is where we are focusing on school districts that have a persistent problem over many years, and they need more in-depth help than what a differentiated assistance level can provide them. So those are the 3 level supports. Any questions on those 3 levels right now? Okay, So what we have within those 3 levels are the different elements of support or the distinguishing areas of work that will occur. And that includes the varying pathways to support. So LEAs have varying ways that they can access the differentiated assistance support. They have varying ways to access level 1. They're all out there. Okay? The outreach to LEAs. We had every single county superintendent provide outreach to our local education agencies that were identified for differentiated assistance to find out, we're here, we're reaching out, let's start this partnership now of how we can help you. Right? And part of that work is doing a root cause analysis in collaboration to really find out what's going on, what are the systemic issues that are creating barriers to increasing student outcomes. Okay? And then again, the support provided to the LEAs is very focused around improving student outcomes. So there are also varying tools of support that have been developed over the past several years that are available to our LEAs as part of the statewide system of support. First and foremost, that we're all very familiar with, is our local control accountability plan, right? And the LCAP addendum that goes with that. The rubrics and dashboard that creates the opportunities for LEAs to elevate their local data and create local data they can use to monitor goals on multiple measures throughout the year. It's something we haven't seen before, so it's really exciting because it's based on the local context. And then again, going back to those LEA local indicators where you get to emphasize the local context because everybody's context is different. So we have that individualized piece starting from the very beginning with the tools that we're providing for support. So how is differentiated assistance determined? So first, it centers on the state 8 priorities, and you'll see those pretty soon in the next slide. It uses the evaluation rubrics from the dashboard as a tool to determine eligibility. Right now, we have over 225 identified districts for differentiated assistance. So that's why I want to make sure you understand how important, how differentiated assistance is determined, because we have a lot of school districts involved in this process. And also the education code states that a school district is eligible for differentiated assistance if any student group met the criteria for 2 or more LCFF priorities. So let's look at the criteria. They're based on the 8 state priorities. So the first one is around the basics. So this is the condition of learning. This is where your students have access to standards aligned instruction, your facilities, your teacher assignments. Okay, so, and this is based on, the criteria is based on local performance indicator. So LEAs determine what that local performance indicator is and they upload it to the dashboard pieces. So you can, if you're not meeting your basics for 2 or more years on your local performance indicator, and that's one of the criteria. The next is the implementation of state academic standards, a lot of our work is grounded in. Okay. And so again, that is based on local performance indicator. If you have not met that for 2 or more years, you could be identified for differentiated assistance. Okay. For parent engagement, which is priority 3, same criteria as the first 2 priorities, not meeting that for 2 or more years your local performance indicator. Okay. I'm going to go in order because I had to squeeze in 7, 8 on the slide to make sure it fit in there. So priority 4 is pupil achievement. So I'm on the next column. And this is a little different because this is based on our Smarter Balance Assessment consortium that all of our students take. So for this criteria, you look at several different things. So you can be red on both ELA, so English Language Arts, and math tests. That's one. Or you can be red on ELA or math tests and orange on the other. So red and orange on either ELA or math, right? And the third is if you have a red on the English language indicator, and that's for your EL subgroup only. So there's 3 different ways that you can fall under the criteria for differentiated assistance in pupil achievement. Okay? For pupil engagement, for priority 5, we are looking at the graduation rate indicator. So if you're red on the graduation rate indicator, that's the criteria. Or red on the chronic absence indicator. Okay. Priority 6 is school climate. This is your suspension rate indicator. If you are red, then you've met the criteria. Or if you've not met for 2 years or more, 2 or more years on your local performance indicator for school climate. Okay. And then for priority 7 and 8, this is the access to and outcomes in a broad course of study. It is red on the college and career indicator. So this is the criteria that's being used to identify districts for differentiated assistance. Okay. Mm-hmm. I know they'll correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so what does differentiated assistance include? Well, as we've talked about, it includes all of those things we've learned from our past change efforts of what was successful and what was not. So this really focuses around the flexible and context-specific different support that is in partnership with the County Office of Education, the CCEE. We have a lot of pilot schools that are involved with CCEE. CDE is also providing some technical assistance, but really it's the partnership between the LEA and the County Office of Education and their other partners that may be providing this focused differentiated assistance support. It works alongside of each other. They're partners. This is not a top-down situation. This is, here's what's happening. How can we help you? Why is this happening? And diving into the issue together. Okay? It's systematic. There's a process. The state board had the pleasure of listening to several different county offices present how they are working with the districts. This is kind of a synthesis of everything that they're doing because I couldn't ask them all to come. But we've heard from El Dorado County Office of Education. We've heard from Sacramento County Office of Education and several other school districts. I believe Kern County Office of Education is also presented, and just how they're working with districts and what that looks like for them. Okay, and one of the biggest pieces that engaging with their teachers, their community, is also a part of their processes. Okay. So what we've been doing at the state level is several things, because the foundation of our statewide system of support is really, as I've said, and I'll keep saying it again because it's really important, is the partnership between the State Board of Education, CDE, CCEE, and all of the county offices and our stakeholder groups across the state. To enhance the collaboration and the coordination of our efforts with these agencies, a system of support planning group was formed about a year ago. And this group meets every other month, and we respond to concerns and interests of the field based on the system of support and what's happening with differentiated assistance, while also focusing on aligning all of our work together to make sure that we have consistent and coherent messaging, because we're all on the same team. We're there for the same goal. So the System of Support Planning Group has identified several priorities based on all of this work and feedback from the field. These priorities, and I have the privilege of working on several of these priorities. I'm working on the system coordination and support for level 3 districts. So again, because we don't know exactly what level 3 looks like yet. So we are studying some of our practices with level 2, studying some of our practices with our state receivership schools to determine how those pieces can inform what level 3 should look like for every district identified. And level 3 identification doesn't happen for another year or so. Okay. The other one that I'm working on is the alignment of work and funding opportunities, because again, that alignment of work is really important. I know many of us have been, on the education journey where things just get pronged out and you tend to lose sight of the journey that you're on and the goal that you have with all of these different exits, right, on the freeway. So trying to make sure that we're aligned and all going in the same direction while also tailoring the individualized support for the LEAs. So each of the priority here has a small working group that focuses on the identified priority and uses the larger group to provide feedback on the progress of the going, and are we going in the right direction? Is this going to work? And this work has just begun. So this is very new, and I'm very excited about the progress that we're going to be able to make over the next several months, and I'm hoping to report back to you often about what we're doing with the System of Support Planning Group and the priorities. So with that, are there any questions? I'm going to talk about what's happening next. We're on this continuous improvement journey together. There's a cycle. It's going to be never ending, as it should. I mean, we're educators. We're constantly learning. So we've come a long way from where we were a year ago, and there's much work to continue to do as we all are on this journey together. So currently, we're looking at the very recent budget trailer bill language that just came out last Friday, and the trailer bill language is providing more guidance on the statewide system of support and identifies funding to help the work. So the planning group will continue their work on their priorities and working towards coordinated efforts with the cohesive messaging. The county offices and CCE and their partners will continue their differentiated assistance work with school districts and schools. The California Department of Education began their work with the statewide system support in reorganizing our department as a whole. We have branches, 3 branches now. One of the branches, and that's the branch that I'm in, is the Teaching and Learning Support branch. So that we have all of the elements all of the divisions that touch on teaching and learning are working together. So we have coordinated work. I do a lot of work with the Special Education Division, our English Learner Support Division, our Educator and Excellence and Equity Division. So we make sure that we're completely aligned and moving forward. A part of that reorganization was creating the CDE-wide action teams, and that's where my work on the statewide system of support has come in. We have action teams focused on building the professional knowledge of our CDE staff as well. So we have 4 CDE by CDE, and that's our CDE team advancement work. We have the One System Action team that is working in conjunction with the system of support team and making sure that our level 1 resources are out there being marketed and hopefully utilized and being coordinated in one website type of thing. And then we also have the integrated planning support team, which is focused on helping the local control accountability plan support. Okay, so those are all the pieces that we're doing within CDE to make sure that we are aligned to be a part of the statewide system of support. So as I said before, this is a shift and a change effort, and all change has its challenges. But when we engage in the work together and we're doing it for the purpose of creating positive student outcome, all students in California will benefit. There's much we will continue to learn, but there's also much we will be able to do for kids through this. Any questions? Hopefully I can answer them.
Go ahead, Commissioner Lara.
So it's not a question, just more of a comment. I think this is amazing work. I mean, I really, really do. I commend the California Department of Education on this work and the real shift between what sometimes could be viewed as punitive, if not meeting measures, to collaborative and building up schools instead of, be a more punitive model. I think is a great approach. I think that shift is going to make LEAs and school sites a lot more receptive to help and support. And that's what we really need if we're going to make those systematic changes to help improve schools and at the very end of the day, student performance, right? Because it's all about the students at the very end. So I really appreciate this work. I think it's much needed, and I look forward to more.
Thank you.
Commissioner Diaz.
I also would like to echo my colleagues' remarks is that, it's great to see this, those of us that have been around with NCLB shifting to this, the alignment with multi-tiered systems of support. Many of our district, I know our district is shifting to that. So just seeing kind of that parallel with what we're doing, multi-tiered versus in what's in the frameworks to what this looks like with the multiple systems of support, that's amazing. I have a question, and I don't know if there's an answer. I haven't been keeping up to speed with the latest, but what about our California Way and ED and identifying the schools? I don't know where are we at with it. I remember that we were working on a state plan and whether or not the U.S. Department of Ed was going to. Is there any update to that? Like I said, I apologize if there has been. I was just curious.
Are you talking about the ESSA state plan?
Yeah,
Whether it's
in
been
identifying
approved
schools.
by-
Yeah, using the same system that we have, but using it for Title I and identifying the schools. I was just wondering, is there any update to that? Do we know?
Haven't heard officially from the U.S. Department of Education of whether a state plan has been approved.
Okay.
Marguerite Reese has been shepherding this through with the State Board of Education and working with the U.S. Department of Ed. She's hoping within the next week or so we will hear that we have the approval of the U.S. Department of Ed. I don't know if our board members want to add anything to that.
We do know that 2 more states were approved this week, so that brings the total of approved state plans to 45. California is in the last group of 5 states that are left for review and approval. Now, the state board, in taking the action that we took to approve the draft and approve its submission we knew that we were approving a plan that had been developed with after a great deal of conversation with the U.S. Department of Education. I call them ED, just for short, so that they have a personality. But we know that the plan was considered approvable. We addressed many of the concerns that had been raised by the department, not only about our system of support, but how the identification of the schools would be. I want to remind the commission that the plan was also submitted with an additional plan to submit a waiver concerning the accountability and reporting for students, for English learners, because we wanted to continue to use the reporting in the way we had crafted it for our dashboard. But it's the board's opinion and the opinion of the state and a great consensus from all of the stakeholders that we submitted a plan that the department has told us would be approvable based on what it is they've asked to be crafted into the draft. So we fully expect the plan to be approved because they told us, if you can write this, if this is the work that you will prepare in doing to address the accountability and reporting and identification, the plan would be approvable.
We're just waiting for the final word.
Thank you. Great work.
Any other questions? All right, so periodically, because we have, I'm sorry, I'm putting my executive director hat back on, because we have our new ad hoc committee around the Every Student Succeeds Act, you'll hear these periodic updates on the statewide system of support. They probably won't always be me. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gregson. Okay. So I think it's time where we take action on all the subject matter committees' motions. Okay, so I think we'll start with SMC Chair Tonkovich.
As Chair of the Visual and Performing Arts SMC, I move that the IQC approve and recommend to the State Board of Education the schedule of significant events for the Visual and Performing Arts Framework for California Public Schools, kindergarten through grade 12.
I second.
Okay, so Commissioner Tonkovich has moved and Commissioner Wu has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I call for a vote on the motion. All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes.
As Chair of the Visual and Performing Arts SMC, I move that IQC approve and recommend to the State Board of Education the application for the Visual and Performing Arts Curriculum Framework and Evaluation Criteria Advisory Committee.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second it.
Okay. Commissioner Tonkovich has moved and Commissioner Wu has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? I call for a vote on the motion. All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes. Okay, so moving to SMC Chair Naditz.
Thank you. Right before we put the motion forward, I need to let you know that the CDE staff just let me know of a couple of very quick edits to the schedule of events. There was an incorrect date for the CFCC meeting for June of 2019, so it has been amended to the correct date of 27th and 28th for that schedule of events. And they collapsed two events into one on the list a little bit later down. So as Chair of the World Languages SMC, I move that the IQC approve and recommend to the State Board of Education the schedule of significant events as amended for the 2020 World Languages Framework for California Schools.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay. So Commissioner Naditz has moved and Commissioner Chow has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? I call for a vote on the motion. All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Okay, motion passes.
And also, as Chair of the World Languages SMC, I move that the IQC approve and recommend to the State Board of Education the application for the World Languages Curriculum Framework and Evaluation Criteria Committee.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Okay. Commissioner Natids has moved and Commissioner Fairchild has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I call for a vote on the motion. All in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes. And now we'll move to Chair Krishna, SMC Chair Krishna.
Thank you. There's a total of 3 actions. The first one, as the Chair of the History Social Science SMC, I move to recommend to the State Board of Education the schedule of significant events for the 2020 Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum.
Is there a second to the motion?
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Krishna has moved and Commissioner Flores has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I call for a vote on the motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes.
Okay, action 2. As the Chair of the History Social Science SMC, I move to recommend to the State Board of Education the Advisory Committee application for the 2020 Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Commissioner Krishna has moved and Commissioner Natids has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I call for a vote on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes.
Okay, action 3. I move to recommend to the State Board of Education the guidelines for the 2020 Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second. Oh.
Okay. Commissioner Krishna has moved and Commissioner Munoz has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? I call for a vote on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes. Okay. So at this time, are there any individuals, any commissioners that have anything they'd like to report on? Okay, we're very efficient today.
Good job, Chair.
Any public comment? No, hearing none? Okay. So if none, I adjourn the Instructional Quality Commission meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.